In this video, we're going to discuss if CGC's grading standards have changed from their inception around the year 2000 to today, with some super helpful information that'll help you take your comic book collection and this hobby to the next level. Stay tuned.
Bry's Comics.
First up, we always do a monthly giveaway here on my YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and like this video, you're entered to win this month's giveaway, which is this slab. And if you head over to bryscomics.com and sign up for the newsletter, you're entered to win a free slab each and every month, and this month it's this slab. So I will announce the winners for April's giveaway in the next video. And also, we have round 2 of the Bry Box of Mystery. I did round 1 last week, and it sold out right away, and I had an overwhelmingly positive response from people saying that they really loved the box. So thank you to everyone who picked up a box, and we're going to do it again. This time it's $150, guaranteed value of at least $175. It's going to have between 1 and 3 CGC 9.8 slabs, and it may or may not have raw books depending on what slabs you get. And the grand prize is going to be Ultimate Fallout 4 and a CGC 9.6 white pages, a book valued well over $1,000, first appearance of Miles Morales. So those are available now at bryscomics.com. So we have a lot to cover in this video. There's a lot of hot button topics, and I do ask that if you're going to leave a comment, especially if it's a spirited comment, to watch the whole video, because a lot of times people will leave comments and talk about things that I address later in the video. All right, so what sparked this video is a recent submission that I got where I got back my Avengers 2 in a CGC 8.5 white pages. Absolutely beautiful book. I'm so happy and thrilled to own this in the personal collection. I got this in on a trade. When I got it in, it was in an old label CGC case, and I noticed there was a ton of pressable defects with the book. And so I decided to crack it out, press it, and send it back into CGC and have it regraded. That's one of the best ways that you can increase the value of your collection is by using this process of crack, press, resubmit. It's also referred to as CPR. And there is a ton of nuance to CPR. You really need to know what you're doing. You need to know about the value of books. You need to know about the condition of books. You need to know about grading. There's a lot of nuance, but it is totally achievable by anyone. And if you subscribe to this channel and follow me, you'll pick up tips all the time about how to successfully CPR comic books. It's a very lucrative, very rewarding part of this hobby. Say, for example, that you were in the market for a Tales of Suspense 39 and you wanted a 3.0. Well, you could buy a 2.0 that has pressable defects and potentially bump it to a 3.0, having instant equity in that book. It's a process used all the time. It's not slam dunk. It's, the opportunities are sometimes hard to find, but if you know what to look for, it's a very, very good way to have this hobby fund itself. So let me just come out and say the statement of what this video is all about, and then we'll dive into some concrete evidence from this book and show some examples of what I'm talking about. But in my opinion, the old label CGC cases were graded looser or less strictly than the current graded books. So I'm talking about CGC was started back in about the year 2000 is when they started grading books, and those books I believe were graded with looser standards than the books of the last 5 or 10 years. So it's important to note that grading is subjective. It always has been subjective. It probably always will be subjective. So there's a lot of nuance to this whole concept. But in my experience, based off of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of slabs that have come through my shop, I have never seen an old label case that wasn't generously graded. In other words, I've never seen an old label case that would say a 9.0 and say, wow, that seems like a tough grade. Never. It's always been the other way around where I go, wow, that's a 9.0. It seems generous. And so it's a very big part of crack, press, resubmit is looking for old label cases, because part of the nuance to this is that old label cases, in almost every situation, books submitted 20 years ago have not been pressed and cleaned. So there's a lot of opportunity there. However, in my opinion, there are also more loosely graded. So you could have a book that is graded at an 8.5 with a ton of pressable defects, improve those defects, and have it come back still an 8.5, which is exactly what happened here, but it's happened to me in many other occasions as well. It happened to me with another book in this exact same submission. It was a Marvel Spotlight 32. It had pressable defects. I actually unboxed it in a video where I got it in a collection, old label case, ton of pressable defects, cleaned it, pressed it. Book looks way better, still a 9.0. This book right here, tons of pressable defects, 8.5 white pages, improved it dramatically, still an 8.0, because I believe that the old label cases are graded with looser standards. In other words, if I would have cracked this book out as an 8.5 in the state that it was currently in, sent it in without pressing it, I believe it would have came back a 7.5. But I improved it and it got the same grade. So it's something that you need to look for when doing CPR, is to at least keep that in mind. And I think even if you don't agree with me, even if for some reason you think that CGC was stricter in grading, which I have never to this day seen an example of a stricter graded old label case, but even if you did have that opinion, if you adopt this mentality that they were looser back then, you'll be more conservative and you'll have more success with CPR because you're going into it knowing that you're behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So I also want to state why I think the grading standards have changed over time, because this video is not a knock against CGC. This is just my opinion based on my experience so that you can have this information and make wiser decisions for yourself. But it's not a knock against CGC because they've been in business for about 22 years now. They've graded over 7 million collectibles. It's probably closer to 8 or 9 million at this point. And you cannot expect somebody to do something 7 million times and not have a difference of opinion in 7 million times later than they did from day one. So, they've got all of this experience over 20 years in grading 7 million collectibles, and I think it's totally reasonable and understandable that their grading standards would have changed. Now, I think we're at a point where we've seen enough comic books, right? We've seen what's out there in the wild. We've been grading comics for 20 years now. We know what's available. I don't think the standards are going to change anymore. But 20 years ago, it was a lot of unknowns about how many Silver Age and Golden Age comics actually exist in the wild. What kind of condition are they in? So as more have come to light and these more massive collections have come to light, CGC, I think it's totally understandable to say, oh, wow, whereas before we thought this book was an 8.5 because of all the examples we'd seen up to that point, this was a really, really good example. But after this, they've gotten hundreds of more examples that are better, and they go, oh, well, maybe actually this is more like a 7.5. So to me, it makes perfect sense why the grading standards have changed. I'm not disagreeing with it. It's not a knock on CGC. I'm just saying that you need to arm yourself with this information so that you make decisions accordingly, because you can find an old label case with pressable defects, improve them, and get the same grade or lower. It's happened to me multiple times. So when I got this book in the old label case, look at how happy I was. Look how naive and happy I was when I got this. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a slam dunk, ton of pressable defects, and an 8.5. And then I cracked it out. Here it is raw. And as you can see, there's just a ton of pressable defects. We'll get into a detailed video here in a sec. There's the back, which you can see just total room for improvement. And let's take a moment just to appreciate this book. I mean, just look at how awesome this book is. I mean, and we even have this splash page here with Iron Man in his Mark II armor, I believe it was. There's early Thor, early Hulk. I mean, just such an awesome comic book. I'm so happy and thrilled to own this in the PC. But when I got it, I looked up the grader's notes, and here's what the grader's notes said. Interior small tear, left center front cover scuff, right bottom whole book bend through book, right center front cover bend, right center front cover small crease, right top whole book bend through book, right top whole book crease through book. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 defects listed, and 6 of them, actually 5 of them, were improvable. And I can see it through the case. I thought, wow, I can improve 5 defects. And so this is definitely a good crack press candidate. Sent it in after being pressed and cleaned by my buddy Hugh at Grade Bump Comics, who absolutely killed this. Drastically improved the condition of this book. Super happy with the work that he did. Go check him out over on Instagram at Grade Bump Comics. And here's the grader's notes when it came back. 2 things listed: light creasing to cover, light spine wear breaks color. A couple things to note about this. Graders notes are not exhaustive. They're not required to put every defect in there. They only put defects in there. I've heard customer service from CGC explain it to me that that's basically notes between graders. So it's not exhaustive. Here you can see the other note said interior small tear, and here it doesn't say that. So that doesn't mean that they didn't see the interior small tear. That doesn't mean that. It just means that they didn't choose to list it in the notes. Maybe they didn't see it, but I believe they did see it and they just chose not to mention it in the notes on this. It is what it is with the grader's notes. It's not exhaustive. They're very, very frustrating. All right, so here we're going to take a look at a detailed video. There you can see a pressable crease on there. There's a bunch of finger bends. This is before pressing. Another, bend and waviness that can be improved there. And this is the kind of stuff that you can expect from Hugh when you send your books to him, is just steps along the way, walking you through the whole process, just the best in the biz, in my opinion. There's another finger bend that you can see from reading that goes there. And here is that color breaking scuff on the left that he kind of just glazed past, but that's the most significant defect now. All of this stuff, most of this stuff has been improved or eliminated. And here you can see in the top right corner the crease that goes through the whole book and the finger bends. And that's the front cover. Okay, so here's the back cover before it being pressed. Just after you can see that crease that goes through the whole book. There's some more finger bends and creasing there. The book can definitely be cleaned. There was also this thing like dragging from the guy's eye all the way to the side that he was able to clean off before he did this video. This is actually probably after he cleaned it because it looks really, really clean now. So I think this is after cleaning, before pressing, because I'll throw up another picture up here of what it looked like before it was cleaned. I mean, it was, it had a lot of soiling and stuff. So as you can see, just a multitude of pressable defects. Now this is the after press, and look at the difference. I mean, look at how amazing this book looks now. Some stuff like that crease right there, it's like a little pinch. There's just some things that have limits on how much you can improve it. But man, if we were to look at these side by side, which actually I'll try to go ahead and do that, throw these two videos up side by side, and you just see just how much better this book looks. I mean, it's just light years better. Okay, and so here's the front. You can see that crease almost completely removed there, at least very, very minimized. There's only so much you can do, like still just tiny, bending and whatnot. This was in that condition for 60 plus years or whatever it was. So it's understandable that they can't come completely out, but man, can they be improved. And there's that color breaking crease on the left-hand side that's on the grader's notes that is holding this book back the most. It almost looks like a bindery tear or something. There you can see some finger bending and stuff on the right that was definitely improved from where it was in the beginning. And there's that color break from what I think is like manufacturing or something. There you can see that crease that went through the whole book has improved, but it's still there. It's definitely greatly improved. Here you can see the tear that they were talking about on the inside of the book, on the interior. And so there you have it. There's the before and after of this book. It is undeniable that this book is light years better than it was when it was originally cracked. First of all, I am incredibly happy to own this. This whole process was actually worth it to me just because the book is in a new case now and it looks so much better, right? So it's about $50 to have a book reholdered for a high dollar book, and it's about $120 or so to have it graded express. So the cost isn't too much more involved to have this. So, and I get the book back way faster when it was graded express versus reholdered. So I'm overall just thrilled to own this book. So this is just one example, right? If I were to make this video, and this was my only experience that I've ever had with this, it would be a terrible video because you can't draw conclusions about something, especially when there's 7 million graded books. You can't draw conclusions based on one example. But this is just one example that I have detailed videos of. I have another book from this same submission, and I have multiple other instances where this happened, and I got the book back in the same grade or lower. One time I had a book that had 3 defects listed on the grader's notes: finger bends, small crease, and spine stress lines. It was a 9.4 with those 3 defects. I cracked it, sent it back in, it came back a 9.2, okay? It wasn't 9.4, it came back a 9.2, and it only had 1 defect listed, spine stress lines. So, and you can tell that I got rid of the finger bends, I got rid of the crease, and it came back a lower grade. And so that's the whole point of this video, is that in my opinion, old label CGC cases are graded looser, and they also haven't been pressed or cleaned in most cases, so there is opportunity there, but you are behind the 8 ball. You have to not only improve those defects, but that has to be enough to make up for the difference in the grading standards from back then to today. So it's something to look for. Again, this isn't a knock on CGC. I think that it's understandable that their grading standards have changed. I'm not even sure if they would deny that they have changed a little bit. One other thing to note too is that in my experience, they usually honor the old grade. So if they graded this at an 8.5, if I sent this back in for a reholder and didn't press or clean it, they usually, in my experience, honor the grade. They would have given it an 8.5 and it still would have had all those defects. The nuance to that is if the book has incurred damage inside the case. So another thing to note about old label CGC cases is that they are notorious for not protecting books. They're notorious for damaging books. Also, people are notorious for damaging books. People put books in windowsills and the sunlight can fade them. People think that they are indestructible when they're inside a case, but no, they're still fragile and delicate and need to be handled with care. So when you buy an old label case, realize that it's been in that case for 20 plus years and you have no idea who's owned it and how they've treated it. So just, it doesn't necessarily have the same grade that's on the label, and also these inner wells on the old cases and the new cases can easily bend edges of comic books and downgrade the grade. So that's it for this video. You guys don't forget to comment on this video, subscribe to the channel, and like this video for your chance to win this slab. And head over to bricecomics.com and sign up for the newsletter for your chance to win a free slab each and every month. As always, thank you for sticking with me to the end of the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bryce Comics.